Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks also the organizers for inviting me here, and especially thanks to Vrije. We were talking about it. We were working in 2007 on the integration of the second generation in Europe, and Vrije joined our international project looking into the children of Russian speakers in Estonia, and that was the start of a long collaboration of research. Today I'm going to present a new theoretical framework, integration into diversity theory for superdiverse cities, and it's basically based on a new book that has just come out, The New Minority, about people without migration background living in superdiverse cities. So people without migration background, some of you would call them the natives, the people that have their origins in their countries for 2, 3 or more generations. It's a book you can download for free. This is the QR code. I will also present it at the end of the presentation. So based on the book and the project, we have developed a new framework, but first of all, let's talk a bit about the dominant frameworks when we talk about integration. Integration theories have been here for 40 years, and basically integration theories see integration as a unitary process focused solely on the people with migration background. And in Western European countries, that was first the migrants, then their children, and now even their grandchildren. It's all about the integration of the migrant people in society. And people without migration background, so to speak, the natives, are usually the norm group to which the migrants had to adapt. They were the passive group, and they were sort of the hosts to the newcomers. They had to sort of be explaining the norms and values and how things are done in the country. That was basically the integration framework for many, many decades. Now I want to present a new theoretical framework that is especially for superdiverse cities, as we know them already in Western Europe, majority-minority cities, and of course, if you go to the US, where New York and Los Angeles or Toronto are already majority-minority cities for many, many decades. Now, I think we have to move to a new theoretical framework to really get to the processes in these superdiverse cities. Integration in this model is a bilateral process. Diversity is the new norm in society when looking at these integration processes. And integration in diversity is not only there for people with migration background, but also for people without migration background, the natives. How do they participate to the superdiverse contexts in which they lived? It's a forgotten question in the last 40 years when we talked about integration issues. So why diversity as the new norm? I give the example of my hometown, Amsterdam, which has become a majority-minority city in 2011. Now there's 46% of the people are of Dutch origin in the city of Amsterdam, and there's a wide variety of groups in the city. Some of them are from the former colonies of the Netherlands, some are labor migrants, some are asylum seekers, some are expats and knowledge migrants. Of course, this is very different still to the Netherlands as a whole. So what I'm talking about is especially relevant for big cities. Now, if you look into the future, diversity is becoming even more so the norm in the future. Under the age of 15 in Amsterdam, only 1 in 3 children is of Dutch descent. Only 1 in 3 children. So 2 out of 3 children in Amsterdam have a migrant background. So diversity will be increasingly the norm in our city and in Western European cities. So that, going back to this new theoretical framework, we say that people without migration background do no longer have dispensation in the integration process. they need to be involved in the whole integration process themselves too. And that means they become a target group, not only for research, but also for policy. And importantly, they often lag behind because they have less experience in functioning in a diverse context. So migrants or children of migrants mostly have grown up in sort of bicultural environments. They're, of course, family culture and the culture of the receiving country. They usually went to very diverse schools because they lived in very diverse neighborhoods. So they've learned to do diversity from a very young age onwards. Now, if we look at the people without migration background, also in the city of Amsterdam, they usually have come to the city for study reasons or for work, and they're more often grown up in less diverse places in smaller cities. They have not gone to a very diverse school, they have not lived in a diverse neighborhood, so actually they don't have a lot of experience in doing diversity in practice. So that's why I'm saying they're lagging behind in this process. So this theoretical framework we used to look at 6 European cities, 6 super diverse cities in Europe, 3 harbor cities and 3 financial service sector cities, because we want to have both on board. And all of these cities are either at the tipping point of becoming a majority-minority city or already a majority-minority city. So this is a trend for all Western European big cities at the moment. You see maybe that in Vienna and Hamburg, the tipping point has not been reached, but that is only the case because in these countries, being a migrant or not is based on nationality. If you would base it on birth country and birth country of the parents, also Vienna and Hamburg are on this tipping point of becoming a majority-minority city. So this is the future. This is the future of our cities. So we did a survey in all these 6 cities in majority-minority neighborhoods. We did qualitative interviews and also online experiments in the project. We interviewed more than 3,000 respondents, and the definition of people without migration background is that they are born in the country and that both parents are also born in the survey country. We looked at an age group between 25 and 45 years old because that's the age group that needs to meet a lot of interesting choices in terms of living in a diverse context. Who are their friends? Who is their partner? Where does their children go to school? So these were all interesting topics for our surveys. So the main building blocks of the integration into diversity theory is that we look at both people's diversity attitudes, opinions, and their diversity practices, their social circle. And we assess the ID position using a matrix, and I will show that later on. And this matrix consists of a horizontal axis, diversity attitudes, and a vertical axis, diversity practices. And interesting enough, so you can make, as an assessment in every city and a neighborhood, the ID climate clear based on the findings. We based diversity attitudes on the question, would you say that country's culture is generally undermined or enriched by people coming to live here from another country? And social practices, we asked about the larger circle of friends. How many of the people in your group of friends and acquaintances have a migration background? So you come to this matrix that I introduced already earlier, and you could say that group 3 is the sort of most integrated group in terms of integration into diversity. They have a group of friends that is comparable to the neighborhood in which they live, which is majority-minority, and they find integration as enriching. And group 7, you could say, is the least integrated into diversity. They are negative about diversity and they self-segregate in their own ethnic group. So based on these 9 positions, we can actually assess the ID climate. And of course, what is interesting is that based on the outcomes, we can say which contextual factors and interventions have led to this ID climate in certain neighborhoods and cities. And that makes it an important policy instrument for the future, to see what is happening in these neighborhoods and these cities and how we can improve the ID climate in these neighborhoods. So as an example, I give you some findings from the city of Amsterdam. And the dividing line between people without migration background is really education. So people without a higher education diploma, they seem to be more negative about diversity. They more often see it as threatening. And this is very much also present in the literature, where there's a lot of emphasis that those who are more negative about diversity are lower educated, have lower incomes. But importantly also is this group 3, which I mentioned before. 20% are positive about diversity and also have a very mixed friendship group. And this is a crucial group in a neighborhood and a city, because they form the link between different ethnic groups in the neighborhood. They provide the links between different people and also help to keep social cohesion in a neighborhood present. And this is less often mentioned in the literature. The threatening aspect of people with low education is often mentioned, but the social cohesion aspect of lower educated people is not often mentioned, but is crucial. If we look at the higher educated group, we see a different picture, and most of all, we see a lot of self-segregation of this group. We see that 40%, while living in a majority and minority people, hardly have any or no friends with a migration background. So a very different picture than for the lower educated people. So many people of Dutch descent live in highly diverse neighborhoods. They shop at the Turkish corner store, get their takeaway in a nice restaurant, but many do not have a mixed friendship group. And that led me to the quote that adapting to life in a super diverse context might be the biggest psychological transformation of our times. Not so much for people with a migration background, but for people without a migration background. And psychologically, I mean because they are not longer the norm group and they have to adapt to this new diverse environment, and they seem to have big troubles doing so. So many highly educated people have not learned to function in a super diverse context. And living in a super diverse neighborhood does not automatically lead to participating in that context, as I have shown. But integration into diversity is something that people can learn. And it will be one of the most important competences for the future. Think of this young kid under the age of 15 of Dutch descent in Amsterdam. If he or she doesn't learn to live in a diverse context, later in life, how can he work or she work in a diverse team? How can he or she lead a diverse team if they don't have the competence to do so? And the world is, of course, connected. A lot of these people will work abroad and also need these competences too. What we found in the qualitative research that a lot of the people without migration background show what we call belonging uncertainty in a diverse environment. We use this term, which was actually coined in the US for black people in having belonging uncertainty in a white environment, but we use it the other way around, native people having belonging uncertainty in a diverse context. And they often say in the interviews they feel uncertainty about the rules of engagements, they are afraid to make mistakes in this diverse context, and as a result they avoid contacts with people with a migration background. So how to overcome belonging uncertainty? We also looked at that in our research. And we found that contact really needs to be organized and to have a common basis. This is very important because it doesn't happen spontaneously. There needs to be some organized activity through which people can meet and be less uncertain about the interactions. And that can be leisure activities that are mixed, where people meet each other on the soccer field, for instance, as team members. That can be because they send their children to a mixed school, so they meet as parents of their children. Children come to play at their home with a migration background. Parents meet up, especially in primary school. The people that are your friends are often the parents of other kids in school. So that's an important place where people meet, but also, of course, colleagues in a working place. If that's more mixed, we also see that they have a more mixed friendship group. And this is, of course, especially true for the people who have lower educational diplomas, who are more often in a workplace where they also meet people with a migrant background. So in conclusion, mixing doesn't happen spontaneously, but it does happen in an organized setting with a common goal. And importantly, those who are more mixing in these different environments also seem to be happier. We usually talk about integration issues and the problems, but we never talk about what it actually delivers if people start to participate in a diverse context. And we found out that these people feel more connected to the neighborhood that they live in, they feel more safe, they mention less conflicts with people in the neighborhood, they report more friendly interactions with their neighbors with a migration background, and more friendly interactions in the street, the parks, and on the playground. So there's something to gain if you start participating into a diverse context. Just a few examples of how that translates into urban policies, because that's what policymakers often ask me. So how do we do this in practice? How do we actually try to bring people without migration background into these more mixed settings? And we found a number of interesting examples in our qualitative research. Shopkeepers were very interesting. A lot of these very diverse neighborhoods have, of course, shops with different owners from different ethnic backgrounds, but they have as a common goal that they want to have a nice shopping street, a safe shopping street, and they often come together to do this, and as a result, we see that people also become friends over ethnic group boundaries. So there again, a common cause that brings people in an organized way together. We also see that people who share inner courtyards, and we see that they have sometimes WhatsApp groups together where they organize things, for instance, gardening in the courtyard, or they organize a party in the courtyard, and also there we see through these organized activities that people start to meet up. Sports clubs are, of course, very important. I mean, the whole idea of a team is that you wear the same shirt and you want to win the game. And if this is a more mixed team, it's more logical and also less of a belonging uncertainty to belong to that team and to interact with your team members. Also, religious churches are important that often cater for people from different ethnic backgrounds. And we see that cultural activities are also important in the neighborhood. So there's many ways to activate people without a migration background to overcome them belonging uncertainty. So the obvious starting point for change seems to be the practice of people. This requires stepping out of your comfort zone where everything feels familiar and safe, where you're the norm group, where you probably consider yourself as the person that does not need to adapt. Thank you for your attention. And once again, if you want to download the book, here's the QR code.
Yeah, thank you, Maurice, for the very interesting presentation and the topic, because this issue of diversity or being a minority in a place, but at the same time belonging to this native population is also the case here in Estonia. If you look at the eastern parts of Estonia region, I was born, for example, in Kohtla-Järve and raised in Jõhvi, where the population of ethnic Estonians consists of, let's say, 30%.
It's a minority, yeah.
Exactly, so as a minority.
Yep.
So it was very interesting to hear this, presentation that okay. But do we have any questions from the audience to Maurice, please? Yes, please.
Hello. It was a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Those examples, what you showed us at the end, they are like examples of the concrete actions what could be taken. But as a policymaker, what kind of policies, what kind of measures shall we implement to facilitate the diversity? Thank you.
Yep. Well, I often give the example of the soccer club in my own neighborhood, which is a majority-minority neighborhood in Amsterdam. And we still have a local soccer club, which is becoming increasingly rare because the ground in the city center is becoming more and more expensive. So policymakers often think, well, I mean, we can use that ground of the soccer club better, and we transfer the soccer club further away in the outskirts of the city. But with our soccer club still being a local soccer club, we see that it's an important meeting ground for all the families in the neighborhood. Even the families that do not send their children to a school in the neighborhood, which is very diverse, but outside of the neighborhood in terms of white flight, they send their children to the local soccer club because of convenience, because they can ride to the soccer club on their own, they don't have to bring them there. And as a result, their children meet children with a migrant background in the soccer club. The parents go to the matches and stand beside each other and start to talk with each other. And then, I mean, people start to mingle and become friends. If the policy of the city would be to put the soccer club outside of the city center, you could get immediately the reaction that people would go to the soccer club where they feel at home. And probably that's some soccer club with less migrant children. So these policy decisions are very important, and people have to think about all these policy decisions, also in terms of schools. Where do we put the schools? What is the policy measures? Can parents avoid the local school and go to another school, and segregation is a result? All these policies have to be thought through. What are the impact of whether people are not meeting each other in the school, on the soccer field, in the park, everywhere? So I think what I would say that with every policy decision, this should be in the back of your mind. What will be the impact? Do people, as a result, segregate or meet?
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to Maurice? If not, then thank you once again.